Look at that crowd. Good morning, everybody. We are on Memo Watch. That classified memo consuming Washington could go public literally, quite literally, at any moment. Despite strong opposition from Democrats warning the release could endanger national security. So good morning. We're watching the clock. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome to Friday and welcome to America's Newsroom. Maybe we get it. We wait.
Maybe we get it. Maybe we don't. Could be a couple big hours. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. President Trump taking to Twitter this morning, accusing top leaders in the FBI and Justice Department of politicizing the investigative process to favor Democrats. Meanwhile, Democrats say the memo has been selectively edited to undermine the special counsel's investigation. The two sides going back and forth.
This memo is not an indictment of the FBI, of the Department of Justice. It does not impugn the Mueller investigation or the Deputy Attorney General. What it is the Congress's legitimate function of oversight to make sure that the FISA process is being used correctly.
This memo is really a spin on not just a set of particular documents, but broader classified information than that, because of serious and material omissions is inaccurate.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live with the latest where anything could happen. Good morning, John.
Sandra, good morning. And the betting appears to be that the White House will at least transmit the memo to the House Intelligence Committee. Whether the House Intelligence Committee can get it out today, that may be another question. But the president, other than being caught in an open mic moment on Tuesday night after the State of the Union, where he said 100% he would release the memo, he's been fairly quiet on this. Yesterday, as he was leaving for the Republican retreat at the Greenbrier, West Virginia, he refused to answer questions that were shouted at him. Similarly, when he returned later in the afternoon, he ignored questions as well. But now, as the memo is about to come out, the president weighing in with full-throated accusations on Twitter, saying, quote, the top leadership and investigators of the FBI and the Justice Department have politicized the sacred investigative process in favor of Democrats and against Republicans, something which would have been unthinkable just a short time ago. Rank and file of the FBI are great people. The White House is expected to transmit the memo and an accompanying letter to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence as early as this morning. The White House certainly is anxious to get it out. The Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes wants it out. Speaker Paul Ryan says it should come out, that there needs to be transparency for all the world to see what's been going on. But this morning, the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, as you pointed out, Adam Schiff, saying it should not come out and that Republicans are playing politics with national security. Listen here.
This is exactly the purpose behind this cherry picking of information that Devin Nunes wants to release. This is designed to impugn the credibility of the FBI, to undermine the investigation, to give the president additional fodder to attack the investigation. And it's a tremendous disservice to the American people who are going to be misled by the selective use of classified information. And more than that, it's a terrible new line that we've crossed where we're going to decide, okay, we're going to take this classified information and make it public, but we're going to hide this classified information so that people can be misled.
One of the biggest findings to watch for in the memo is this idea that unverified dossier was used in a FISA court to obtain warrants for eavesdropping on Trump campaign officials. And in terms of things being left out, the Democrats also, Sandra, have a memo. Speaker Paul Ryan believes that should come out as well, but that it needs to go through the same process that the Republican memo went through before it sees the light of day. Otherwise, you're circumventing the processes that are in place there as checks and balances. Sandra?
So, John, it sounds like this could happen at any moment, or at least sometime this morning, perhaps, according to your reporting. So how will this memo actually be released to the public?
All right, so the memo was transmitted over to the White House on Monday after the committee vote for a 5-day review by the president. The White House has been looking through all of this. We hear that it's okay with the release, the declassification of this, so that the White House will transmit the memo and an accompanying letter saying that it has no objections to the declassification of this to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Then it's up to the Intelligence Committee to get this out. It could simply post the memo on its website, but more likely there will be some sort of briefings of a group of reporters to walk people through the context and the content of the memo, and then it will be released after that so that everybody understands fully what is contained within this memo. Sandra.
And the president also sounding off, John, on immigration reform at that Republican retreat yesterday. What happened there?
Yeah, don't forget, we're hitting that looming deadline next Thursday where the government runs out of money. And initially, you'll remember last month, the Democrats were insistent that a fix for DACA be put on the table before they agreed to fund the government. Now it looks like that continuing resolution will probably occur without objection from the Democrats, at least on DACA. But they're running up against that deadline of March the 5th as well. And the president saying that, he's been out there with a plan, but the Democrats have been doing absolutely nothing on this. Listen to what the president said.
We have a chance now to pass into law the immigration reforms that the American people have been demanding for decades and that many of you have been working on for your entire careers. We have a great opportunity as a Republican Party. As the Republican Party, we have a great opportunity. We're getting very little help from the Democrats, but I hope after I leave this room, we're going to get a call from these people, say, let's go. They talk a good game. We have to get help from the other side, or we have to elect many more Republicans. That's another way of doing it.
White House officials tell me there's no hope of getting an agreement on DACA before next Thursday's deadline for funding the government. And then you got that March 5th deadline looming, so the pressure will start to be felt. Sandra?
And maybe we'll see you again this morning, John, as we await the potential release of that memo. Thank you.
Don't
Thanks. Go far, John. Let's get some reaction right now. Katie Pavlich, analysis editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Katie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Tuesday night at the end of the State of the Union address, the president was leaving the House gallery, and Jeff Duncan's a Republican from South Carolina. And he asked the president whether or not we'd see the memo. And the president said 100%. This is the tweet that Congressman sent yesterday. Having read the memo, the FBI is right to have grave concerns as it will shake the organization down to its core, showing Americans just how the agency was weaponized by the Obama officials, DNC, HRC, Hillary Rodham Clinton to target political adversaries, #release the memo. Okay, the real test, as we all know, is when it's released, what's in it? What's it say?
Right. So Republicans for a couple of weeks now have hyped up this memo as something that will cause people at the FBI to lose their jobs, that will expose corruption. There's a reason why the FBI is pushing back on this. Of course, this week we saw FBI Director Christopher Wray ask in a final plea that the names of FBI agents in this memo be redacted. But the problem for Republicans is living up to the hype, first of all, from a political perspective. And second, the issue is going to be if it really is as bad and the abuses are as egregious as Republicans have alleged, what are they going to do about it moving forward? Are they going to take on FISA reform? Are they going to hold FBI agents who allegedly took part in this corruption and this misbehavior and abuse of the process accountable? Will people actually lose their jobs? As we've seen before with the federal government in terms of abusing power, it's very difficult to hold these people accountable. And so Republicans are going to have to live up to the standards they have set them for themselves in terms of the outrage surrounding the contents of this memo.
They just voted to expand FISA and
right.
renew it.
Exactly.
In the middle of all this, Katie.
And that's the problem. So if they're going to use this as a political document, as they have been accused of doing, which by the left, by the way, people like Adam Schiff have accused them of doing that, the way they can kind of stop that accusation is by putting some real reforms on the table for Congress to work with. But as you just mentioned, they just pushed through FISA on the 702 level in the middle of all of this. And so there is a danger here for Republicans of overhyping the contents of this and not being able to deliver on the accountability that the American people are going to demand when they see it.
Think about what's on the line for the president. What he wants to show is that there's no collusion, right? He said it for a year. And he... I think if you read between the lines and what he's saying from the White House and telling confidants in the West Wing, that this will show yet again there was no collusion. They were just in it to get him.
Well, and that's going to be the big question, too, right? This is a memo that it was written by Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee based on hundreds of pages of classified information that they have seen. But there's going to be another question of where is the evidence to show what is in the memo? And are we going to be satisfied with what's in the memo? Declassification doesn't necessarily mean unredacted. The White House has been working with the FBI to redact a couple of things in this memo. But overall, we're going to be wanting to know where the justification and the evidence is for what's in the memo.
Thank you, Katie. We await, right?
Yes, we do.
I guess it's today.
Every day.
Right
we'll see.
Thank you, Katie Pavlich there. Instant analysis.
Thanks,
there
Bill.
from Washington, D.C. So hang on. You know as much as we know right now, so stand by.
But what we do know is it could happen at any moment, and Katie makes a fair point that a lot of people are talking about this morning. Will this live up to all the hype that we've heard from Republicans that have been demanding the release?
We'll only know when we get a chance to read it. 4 pages in length. It's a summary of everything they believe they have found based on this investigation. So coming up, perhaps.
All right. Much more on that House Intelligence Committee memo coming up next. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who has voiced serious concerns about the FISA program. What does he think that memo is actually going to show us?
Also, former FBI Director James Comey slamming the weasels and liars as he weighs in on the memo. What's he talking about? Who's he talking about? Carl Rove joins us for that, coming up in a matter of minutes here.
And a horrific scene in a middle school. 2 students shot. The suspect, a 12-year-old girl who claims it was all a horrible accident.
It's scary because they're children, and somebody shouldn't be doing that in a children's school. These kids, they're so young for that to be happening. I can understand maybe a high school, but a middle school, it's scary.
17 years.
This president has taken his time this week to make sure that legal counsel, National Security Council, and anyone else involved in the review process has had their time to diligently and thoroughly review the document before sending it back to Congress, because obviously Congress would be the one releasing this.
So that Kellyanne Conway a bit earlier today saying that President Trump has overseen a thorough review, but my next guest has a lot of issues with the surveillance program and issues with the FBI as well. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul is here, and nice to see you. Looked like winter was coming there. That picture from Kellyanne Conway. Thank you for being here. I know you have long-standing issues with the FISA program. That to the side, do you support the release of the memo? Should we see it?
Absolutely. The American public needs to see this, because we need to know, was an entire investigation of a president based on an accusation from a campaign opposition research? If that's what we're basing an investigation on, and people are talking about it on the Democrat side, trying to topple a president over a campaign research, that's a big problem.
No senator, Republican or Democrat, has seen this 4-page memo. That's my understanding.
That's right. We
correct?
requested to see it, and we were denied.
They rebuffed you. Do you respect that decision?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm glad. I would be upset if I didn't know it was coming out. I know it's now going to come out. I wanted to see it because I wanted to know what was in it, and I want to tie all the strings together. There's been a lot of discussion about bias at the FBI and bias in the intelligence community, and to me, the reason why it's so important is this isn't your grandfather's intelligence community. This community can soak up every phone conversation you've ever made, every phone call between foreign countries, all your email, all of your everything can be soaked up by the intelligence community. So we need to have controls in case there are people of bias.
I think we can all agree it's enormously powerful, this law itself. Nancy Pelosi thinks it's bogus, and she said as much right here.
First of all, it's a bogus memo. It's not based on fact, but it does reference highly classified intelligence matters. Now we see that he's even altered the memo, so it's to make matters worse. If he were to release that memo, he would not only be endangering our country, but he would also be violating the rules of the Congress of the United States.
He's talking about Devin Nunes. It's our understanding some edits were made. They were grammatical changes, not factual changes. Is that your understanding?
I think that's sort of a misdirection campaign. This is really about, so let's say the memo says that Andrew McCabe somehow was involved with using this memo, this Russian dossier, to get a warrant for the Trump campaign. That's important. It's also important to know that Andrew McCabe's wife was a Democrat running for office connected to the Clinton machine. And we can't have bias in the middle. The whole idea is, you know, should the FBI be inserting themselves into a presidential election? First, they came out with evidence that was damaging to Clinton, and then they come out with evidence, you know, that they're investigating the Trump campaign. Maybe the FBI shouldn't be real vocal or public during presidential elections. Maybe the FBI shouldn't be deciding our elections.
To that end, you wrote a letter yesterday to Christopher Wray, head of the FBI. You're asking a couple significant questions about, well, Page and Strzok, these high-ranking FBI agents. Here's part of what you said on screen. If openly biased agents such as Strzok and Page still have access to classified databases, one might argue that the FBI's internal controls are inadequate. The questions you ask are fundamental. Who gets to see the information? Who delivers it? How do you know within the FBI who has done this?
Right.
How do you solve that?
Well, see, we've had this big debate in Congress, and we had it about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, before the discussion of this memo came out, we had a debate over whether or not we should have more controls. The FBI says, trust us, we'll always do the right thing. And most FBI agents are good people, so they do the right thing. But what happens when you get biased agents like Strzok and Page, whose goal is to bring down President Trump or prevent him from winning the election? That's why what I've asked for, and the reform that many of us have asked for, is that when they want to search the database, so if you have two people who hate Donald Trump working at the FBI, they can't just search the database. We want them to ask a judge for permission.
Why, you want to go to court in order to get that?
Absolutely, because then if it's
biased. Is that the only way to prevent it, or is there an internal system that you would respect?
The internal systems just don't work. I mean, we had evidence from 2013 that NSA agents were looking at their wives' and girlfriends' phone calls. So that shouldn't happen. That's why if you have a judge, it would never happen. If you have internal controls, the question is, how good are your internal controls? And then the question is, will they sweep it under the rug if there's been an abuse of the system?
So you would require Peter Strzok and Lisa Page to go to a judge in order to access the FISA database?
I would require all FBI agents to do it for domestic searches. If they're going to search American, if they want to look at Bill Hemmer's name in the database, by golly, a journalist's name in the database, you're probably in the database. Realize this, that if you've ever communicated with a correspondent overseas, you are probably in this database. It's not just about terrorists. It's about everybody else that are presumably innocent.
We'll see what answer you get from Christopher Wray.
Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Rand Paul here in New York. Sandra, what's next?
Remember when Tom Brady's jersey was stolen at last year's Super Bowl? Well, that has prompted new security measures in Super Bowl locker rooms. We're going to have that for you. Plus, how authorities plan to keep everyone safe at Sunday's big game.
Also, the groundhog has spoken. Oh, my. We getting 6 more weeks of winter? What do you think, America? It's cold outside.
Please, no.
Well, the answer's coming up. Stand by.
I got you, babe.
Moments ago, Fox News Alert want to share this with you. Inside the courtroom, the parent of a victim of Dr. Larry Nassar charging at him during a sentencing hearing this morning. Watch the video. So the deputies took him down. The father apparently asked to say a few words and started by asking to get Nassar alone in a room for a few moments. The judge clearly refusing that offer. That's when the man charged at the doctor. Nassar taken out of the courtroom. He was not affected by it. Father was handcuffed and escorted out as well. More than 260 women have come forward accusing him of molesting them. So that sentencing phase continues there in Michigan.
Meanwhile, final security preparations are underway ahead of the big game this weekend. Authorities working to protect the stadium, and more than 1 million fans expected to pour into downtown Minneapolis. And the NFL is implementing new security measures inside the locker room. A year after you'll remember a member of the international press made off with Tom Brady's Super Bowl jersey. The media credentials now equipped with electronic chips. Senior correspondent Rick Leventhal is live from the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota. Rick, this is a huge challenge for law enforcement, of course, especially in a smaller city like Minneapolis.
And they're getting a lot of help here. Of course, the NFL and the host cities have a security template that they work from year to year because some things don't change, like having to protect Super Bowl Live and the Super Bowl experience and, of course, the game day on Sunday. But every city offers different challenges, and one of the big ones here in Minneapolis is the weather. It was 7 degrees below zero when we got up this morning, and Sunday could be almost as cold, if not colder. Of course, most of the venues are indoors, the game's indoors, but people have to go outside often to get inside, and the security personnel have to stay outside in many cases. You have hundreds of National Guardsmen along with thousands of local, state, and federal police and agents, and those guys are providing security around the perimeter in frigid temperatures, so they need to be rotated indoors regularly. Also, while Houston, last year's venue, had a big sprawling campus of parking lots and arenas and massive security perimeter fence. U.S. Bank Stadium is located right downtown.
Here in downtown Minneapolis, it's surrounded by private buildings. There's a hospital a block away. So it creates a lot of challenges when you start looking at things like placing a security perimeter around the stadium, when you start looking at staging resources, whether those be public safety vehicles or trucks.
Well, they've taken a lot of security precautions to guard against vehicle-borne attacks like we've seen around the world, and also sniper attacks like we saw in Las Vegas, and they seem pretty confident that this will be a safe Super Bowl. Sandra?
Okay, it looks so cold there.
Yeah, it does.
Stay warm, buddy.
I can confirm that it is, in fact,
by the way, what's going on at the Mall of America? You're standing outside.
Well, it is the largest mall in the U.S. Apparently, you can fit 9 Yankee stadiums inside of it. And that's where the teams are located. The media's headquarters is located this year. And fans are being asked to come here now this year to be screened for security indoors for the first time. And then they can board a light rail from this massive mall. They can park here and they get on a train after they get screened for security and go directly to the stadium. That's a first for the NFL. And then they can walk right indoors of the stadium. The FBI, one of dozens of federal partners here helping out with this sort of thing. But probably the most important role of the FBI is analyzing the intelligence to be on guard for terror attacks.
We're not just sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. We are, we're looking at social media. We're, we're contacting partners. We're collecting, we're looking at the 911 dispatch. We're looking at our own, our own holdings. I mean, all the possible ways that we could gather information that would, suggest that there could be something.
Of course, no known credible threats and no chatter suggesting that an attack might be in the works. They have the largest security footprint here for an event in Minnesota in the state's history for this Super Bowl.
A huge task to secure that city and the stadium, but one I'm sure they're very happy to do. Host the Super Bowl. Minneapolis, Thank you very much, Rick. Stay warm.
Inside. I mean, he's got the biggest mall in America, right behind him.
Yep.
Big day Sunday. You got the Eagles, I got the Patriots. All well and good. It could be -2 come
And
Sunday.
you are attending.
I'm intending. I'm wearing everything I have.
You better. You better.
By the way, we are wearing red today because this begins National Awareness Month in February.
Heart awareness for women.
Heart awareness for women. Men too, right?
Men
we
as
could
well,
throw the men
yeah.
in that bag too.
Sure.
But so that's why we're.
It's a great cause.
That's indeed.
Happy to do it.
But we're matching,
I mean, kind of.
We're into it.
This is a little bit more of a room.
Well, you look better than I do. Always.
But it's good. Good to show your support.
9:30 here in New York. Now, this story is unbelievable. A 12-year-old girl arrested, accused of shooting her classmates at school. Why police are now saying it could have all been a terrible accident? We'll explain that today.
And President Trump calling out Democrats over an immigration deal. So where's the counteroffer?
The name is Resist. That's the name of their movement. Resist. That's all they do is resist.
Fox News alert now. All indications are is that we will see that memo, and likely this morning, but none of that is confirmed. Biggest story of the day right now, President Trump expected to allow the release of a classified FISA memo very soon, despite strong objections from the Justice Department, the FBI, and Democrats. That memo said to be detailing alleged surveillance abuses in the initial stages of the Russia investigation. President Trump just a bit earlier today on Twitter accusing the FBI and the Department of Justice of politicizing the, quote, sacred investigative process to favor Democrats over Republicans. So stand by. Not yet.
President Trump talking up his hopes for a bipartisan immigration deal at the Republican retreat, but claims Democrats are missing in action on negotiations.
We have a chance now to pass into law the immigration reforms that the American people have been demanding for decades. We need the support of the Democrats in order to do it, and they might not want to do it. They talk like they do, but I don't think they do. But I gave a number that was, I thought, a very generous number, was because I wanted to see whether or not they were interested in approving that. Because if they don't approve something within that sphere, that means, very simply, that they're not looking to approve it at all. They want to use it for an election issue, but it's now an election issue that will go to our benefit, not their benefit.
Joining me now, right, Hemmer, let me give this my best shot. One in a William. 1 in a million. One William. See, I can't even do it, Hemmer.
Take two.
It's all yours. All right, co-host of The Five and a Fox News political analyst. And Steve Hayes is here, editor-in-chief of the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. Juan, I know you miss it when Hemmer doesn't do that for you, so I tried.
It's Friday morning.
My best. All right, so you heard the president there saying Democrats don't even want a deal, do they?
I think they do, desperately. I think that there's tremendous pressure coming from not only the Dreamers and the Hispanic caucus on the Hill, but I think Democrats in general were so upset at the fact that Senator Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, seemed to cave last time around. So I think there is pressure, and they do want a deal. But from their perspective, and here I'm quoting Schumer, negotiating with Trump is like negotiating with Jell-O. You're never quite sure exactly what he wants. And the latest offer that came from the White House, he was going to cut legal immigration in the United States, do away with what he calls chain migration, which previously was known as family reunification, keeping families together, and $25 billion for a wall. So, I mean, that on top of the way that he demonized immigrants as all members of MS-13 during the State of the Union has absolutely angered the Democrats.
I mean, Steve, as we look at that image there of the other night, Chuck Schumer just, you know, sour face all through the first address from the president, State of the Union address. You just wonder, is the president's point well received? I mean, are Democrats willing to work with him to get something done? He's still sounding pretty optimistic. He says despite their resistance to all this, he's pretty sure he's going to be able to get his border wall at least in a DACA fix at the very least.
Well, that was the way that Senator John Thune, a member of the Senate leadership, narrowed the terms of the debate last night when he projected what might come out of such negotiations. Look, I think the president is right. The Democrats really are looking to extract a political price for this more than they're looking to come up with some deal. There's very little incentive for Democrats to work with the president on anything because his popularity is so low, and the center of gravity in the Democratic Party is on the far left right now. So there's a disincentive for Democrats, even Democrats in red states, to be working with the president on this or on many other issues right now.
Let me show you the president's tweet from last night, Juan, and bring you in on this. He tweeted this: the Democrats just aren't calling about DACA. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have to get moving fast, or they'll disappoint you again. We have a great chance to make a deal or blame the Dems. March 5th is coming up fast. Chuck Schumer this morning tweets, President Trump wants an immigration deal, but he cannot follow the dictates of Mark Meadows and the Freedom Caucus. Their plan won't get a majority in either House of Congress. Where does that put us, Juan?
Well, that's a tough one because I think the president has said he's willing to take the heat from the Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows, the far-right people who call him Amnesty Don and say that he is providing a pathway to citizenship in his last offer to the Democrats, a pathway that didn't exist previously. So they see him as making DACA more liberal, more open to immigration, and they don't like the type of immigration that they're seeing. So it's very interesting because it's almost, Sandra, like an intramural fight. It's not the Super Bowl at this moment in terms of immigration negotiation. It's one team, the Republicans, fighting with each other, and I don't know how much
let Steve
President
Hayes
Trump
finish
can
off by
tolerate.
responding to that. Do you think that we're going to see another government shutdown, Steve?
Well, that's always a possibility. I hate to agree with Juan, but I think he's right on this one. And look, the president, when he campaigned for office in 2016, he was campaigning as an immigration hardliner. So it's not really any surprise that those who are restrictionists on immigration in the Republican Party want the president to do what he said he was going to do. So I think that accounts for a lot of the fights, the infighting among Republicans right now. And I don't expect that we'll see those who want the president to follow through with how he campaigned, that they'll let up very easily.
All right, a big morning as we also await that classified memo and its potential release. We are thankful to both of you gentlemen for coming on this morning. Steve,
Go Hearts. Keep your heart going, Sandra.
Very good. Full support.
You too,
red
boys.
on the set here.
I mean, where's
Friday.
the red, fellas? I mean, come on. Nothing.
They didn't get that memo.
It's 1 in a million.
You know, that's your gig. I'll leave that one for you.
You got to put up with me 20 minutes now before the hour. A shooting now allegedly by a 12-year-old girl at a middle school in L.A. is now being called an accident. Two 15-year-old students were injured. One of them said to be in critical condition. William Longinus live on the story in Los Angeles to say what's up. William, good morning.
Well, Bill, reports of the active shooter came in just before 9 a.m. yesterday morning inside a class at a L.A. middle school. Two 15-year-old students shot, one in the head, one in the wrist. Police are rushing to the scene and put the school on lockdown.
What I heard was there was like a pop, a big pop. It didn't sound quite like a gun, but it was a gun. I saw a student was bleeding near her vein, and the blood was squirting out all over the floor.
So police arrested a 12-year-old girl. Her grandmother claims that she was bullied at school, but students say the shooting was an accident.
It was an accident because they thought it was a toy gun.
Okay.
But then they shot.
So doctors expect both children to fully recover. 3 others were treated for wounds caused by flying glass. The suspect's father, Bill, claims the family doesn't own a gun. The question is, of course, where did she get it? Why was it loaded? Why did she bring it to school? Some say that it was in a backpack and it went off when she dropped it. 2 kids shot. City attorney says the owner could face charges for failing to secure it.
Wow.
Back to you.
Strange story. William, thank you. Our best to those recovering out there in L.A.
Former FBI Director James Comey has a direct message on that memo. Comey now tweeting about weasels and liars. Karl Rove is on deck with reaction to that.
Also, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley with some tough new talk for Russia. Stand by. Coming back next.
Russia is not our friend.